Porter completed The Grave, chronologically the final segment of the Miranda cycle, when she lived in Paris in the early 1930s. Based on a real childhood incident, the story recounts two related events 8-year-old Miranda and her 12-year-old brother Paul experienced during an excursion through the desecrated family cemetery on an expedition to hunt doves and rabbits. In one of the open graves, they find treasure, an engraved gold ring claimed by Miranda, and a silver coffin screw designed as a dove claimed by Paul. Shortly afterward, Paul shoots a rabbit. The children's delight with the treasure turns to dismay when Paul slits the rabbit's carcass and unveils tiny embryos. They were just about ready to be born, Paul says cautiously, while Miranda trembles, instinctively identifying with the rabbit's femaleness, having understood a little of the secret, formless intuitions in her own mind and body. Feeling complicit in Paul's killing the mother rabbit and her unborn babies, Miranda thinks about the whole worrisome affair with confused unhappiness for a few days and then buries it deep in a psychological cave of painful memories, to be forgotten for a long time. More than 20 years later, picking her way through a Mexican market, Miranda is intercepted by an Indian vendor who holds up before her a tray of dyed marshmallow sweets in the shapes of all kinds of small creatures, including baby rabbits. Miranda is mentally yanked back to that far-off day when her brother killed the mother rabbit and they discovered her unborn litter in their embryonic sac. With the memory, she is reasonlessly horrified until she remembers the other experience that long ago day, the discovery of treasure in the open graves. Instantly upon this thought, the dreadful vision faded, and she saw clearly her brother, whose childhood face she had forgotten, standing again in the blazing sunshine, again 12 years old, a pleased, sober smile in his eyes, turning the silver dove over and over in his hands. While the dove might traditionally represent a divine spirit, in this instance, crafted with human imagination, it represents art as well. And the message is that in stories about dead mothers and dead babies, art subsumes the anguish. From 1939 through the 1940s, Porter presented other mothers and fictional mothers. In The Downward Path to Wisdom, published in 1939, the mother and the grandmother, along with nearly everyone else, withhold from the child Stephen the love that would have negated the hate he learns. In A Day's Work, published in 1940, the bitter yet delusional Mrs. Halloran sets aside her principles to support her useless husband's futile dream of reaping riches from political corruption, and she counsels her married daughter, "Now remember this, Maggie, if anything goes wrong with your married life, it's your own fault." In The Leaning Tower, published in 1941, Charles Upton, a painter and caricaturist, thinks of his mother, as well as all other domesticated females, as an antagonist to his art. He had waged perpetual warfare with her because she looked upon his sketches as the enemy of order, wanting to straighten them out or hide them away in the deepest shelves of a closet. Through the 1940s and 1950s, until its publication in 1962, Porter also was working sporadically on her only long novel, Ship of Fools. A satire in the spirit of Erasmus and Swift, and an allegory in the spirit of Homer and Brant, the novel's large cast of characters provides many representatives of motherhood, caricatures of it, and observations on it, within the controlling motifs of home and love. It was Porter's final artistic comment on the subject. Long before her writing life had come to an end, Porter had concluded, like Charles Upton, that motherhood and art were incompatible, and she liked to see herself as a martyr to art, just as her mother had been a martyr to motherhood. But it was her failure to meet that maternal ideal that created a deep recess of pain in the repository of personal experience from which she drew inspiration for her art. Without this private anguish fueling her creative imagination, there would not be, in their same forms and with their same themes and textures, Maria Concepcion, the fig tree and the grave, flowering Judas and the cracked looking glass, he, magic and theft, holiday, rope, and the downward path to wisdom, and ship of fools. We might say that the loss of those exquisite works would have been our loss, and we might say that Katherine Anne Porter's sacrifice and suffering were justified. We know what she said publicly in her last years about her satisfaction with the course of her life and its ultimate commitment to art, but we won't ever know what she really thought.
As usual, we have time for a few questions, so feel free.
Yes?
I've read some time ago that she was angry with Victoria. Could you tell us why?
I don't know of any reason she was angry with Victoria. She didn't talk about Victoria. What we know about Victoria is really what we have learned from private notes and from sources external to her. She lived here only a short time, about 7 months. And as I discussed yesterday at the Bronte Club, it was during those 7 months that she decided she really didn't want to be an actress. She wanted to be a writer. And I think the reason she came to that conclusion, it was a major shift. She was 15 years old, beautiful. She'd had a successful season in summer stock in San Antonio and much encouragement there. But I think that she borrowed from the Bronte Library, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. And I think she thought, that's what I want to do. So Victoria was really important in changing the course of her life. And of course, it was in Victoria at a Christmas dance that she met her first husband, John Henry Coons, and that altered the course of her life also.